I'm Rose, 72 years old, and I've seen my share of family storms, but nothing prepared me for this. Under the dim glow of fairy lights in the Biltmore estate gardens, the air grows heavy, thick with the scent of rain-soaked hydrangeas and betrayal. My granddaughter, Sophie, radiant in her cream dress, stands frozen as my son-in-law William's hand cracks across her cheek. The slap echoes, silencing 70 guests. Gasps ripple through the crowd, and my heart shatters, not just for Sophie, but for the family I thought I knew. William's voice snarls, demanding her $50,000 wedding fund for his son's debts. What have I let fester all these years? Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. I've lived in Asheville, North Carolina, most of my life, a town cradled by the Blue Ridge Mountains, where artists paint the hills and neighbors know your name. As a retired librarian, I spent decades shelving stories, but the hardest ones to read were those written in my own family's silences. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, Sophie's engagement to Evan Carter, a kind software engineer who loves her fiercely. I watched her plan this party for months, stringing fairy lights among the Biltmore's trellises, arranging blue hydrangeas and white roses to match her dreams. She saved $50,000 for her wedding, every penny earned through extra shifts as a pharmaceutical researcher, while my daughter Margaret and her husband William poured their money into my grandson Liam's endless failures. I should have seen the storm brewing. Margaret arrived at the garden late, her face tight, her eyes darting like she was calculating the cost of every flower. William, in his ill-fitting suit, reeked of scotch before the first toast. Liam, 4 years older than Sophie, shuffled behind them, his wrinkled shirt betraying his latest business flop, an energy drink startup that collapsed under $70,000 in debt. I've watched this pattern for years. Margaret enabling, William manipulating, Liam taking. Yet Sophie, my bright girl, built her life differently. She worked 3 jobs through college, drove a beat-up Honda, and tracked every dollar. I admired her, but tonight I feared for her. The evening started beautifully. The Biltmore Gardens glowed under a twilight sky, the fountain's gentle splash mingling with laughter. Evan's parents, Grace and Ethan, arrived from Raleigh, their warmth wrapping Sophie like a quilt. They gave her pearl earrings, a family heirloom, and I saw tears in her eyes. Joy, I thought. Not knowing the pain to come, my own heart swelled. Remembering my own engagement decades ago before I learned how secrets could rot a family from within. I stood near the appetizer station, sipping iced tea, watching Sophie and Evan steal kisses, their love a beacon in my jaded eyes. But then I noticed Margaret whispering with William in a shadowed corner, their gestures sharp. Liam paced nearby, checking his phone obsessively. I've seen this before. Late-night arguments in their Asheville home, hushed talk of investors and loans. I should have spoken up years ago when I found cash stashed in their kitchen, when Margaret brushed off my questions. Tonight, I told myself it was Sophie's day, not the time for old suspicions. How wrong I was. At 8 o'clock, Evan clinked his glass, his voice warm as he toasted Sophie. He spoke of their first date, a clumsy spill of wine at a River Arts District bistro, and how her laughter won his heart. The crowd cheered as he knelt, playfully re-proposing, sliding the ring onto her finger again. For a moment, I believed we could all be whole. Then William grabbed Sophie's elbow, pulling her to a secluded alcove. Margaret and Liam followed, their faces grim. I stayed close, my librarian's instinct for stories sensing trouble. "You have to help Liam," William hissed, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. He owes $70,000. Those men don't mess around. Sophie's face paled, but her voice was steel. That's my wedding fund, Dad. I worked 5 years for it. Margaret clutched her hands, pleading. Family comes first, sweetie. I wanted to intervene, to tell Sophie she owed them nothing, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, heavy with years of silence. Then it happened. William's face flushed red, his scotch-soaked breath fouling the air. You selfish girl! He spat, and his hand swung, striking Sophie's cheek with a crack that stopped time. She stumbled against a column, her hand flying to her face. The garden fell silent, guests frozen, their eyes wide with horror. Evan rushed toward her, but I stood there, my own failure ringing in my ears. I'd seen William's temper, his gambling, his lies. Why hadn't I protected her? Sophie straightened, her eyes blazing. You don't get to do this, she said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the police. William laughed, a bitter sound, but Margaret gasped, No, Sophie, please. Liam just stared at his shoes, useless as ever. I moved closer, my voice trembling. Sophie, I'm here, I said, touching her shoulder. She nodded, dialing 911, her voice steady despite the red mark blooming on her cheek. As we waited for the police, Clara, Sophie's artist friend, showed me her phone. I recorded it all, she whispered, the video capturing William's rage, Sophie's defiance. The Biltmore's security cameras, set up for the gifts, would back her up too. I looked at Margaret, my daughter, tears streaming down her face, and felt a pang of guilt. Had I taught her to enable William, to ignore his darkness? I thought of the cash I'd found, the business associates who called late at night. I should have asked harder questions. The chapter ends with sirens in the distance, their wail cutting through the garden's stillness. Sophie stands tall, Evan at her side, while William paces, his bravado crumbling. I know this is only the beginning. Secrets will unravel, and I'll have to face my own role in this mess. But for now, I'm with Sophie, ready to help her fight. Have you ever watched a family unravel at a moment meant for joy? That's where my story starts, and I hope you'll stay with me to see where it leads. The police lights flash through the Biltmore estate gardens, casting eerie shadows on the hydrangeas, their blue petals drooping under the weight of the night's rain. I thought I'd seen every kind of family heartache, but watching my granddaughter Sophie clutch her cheek, the red mark from William's slap glaring under the fairy lights, I feel a failure deeper than any I've known. Sirens wail closer, and the 70 guests stand frozen, their whispers swallowed by the fountain's relentless gurgle. Sophie's voice, steady as she speaks to the 911 dispatcher, cuts through the chaos. My father assaulted me, she says, and my heart twists. She's calling the police on her own father, my son-in-law. Evan, her fiancé, stands like a shield beside her, his jaw tight. My daughter Margaret sobs, clinging to William, who paces, his scotch-soaked breath tainting the air. Liam, my grandson, stares at the ground, useless in his shame. I move closer to Sophie, my hand trembling as I touch her arm. I'm here, sweetheart, I whisper. But inside, I'm screaming at myself. Why didn't I stop this years ago? The police arrive, 2 cruisers pulling up to the garden's iron gates. Officer Emily Tate, a young woman with sharp eyes, approaches us first, her notepad ready. Sophie explains the confrontation, her voice calm, but her hands shaking as she describes William demanding her $50,000 wedding fund for Liam's debts. Clara, Sophie's artist friend, steps forward, her phone glowing with the video she recorded. I watch over her shoulder as the footage replays William's rage, his hand swinging, the crack of the slap. My stomach churns. The security cameras caught it too, I tell Officer Tate, pointing to the Biltmore's discreet lenses hidden among the trellises. I'd helped Sophie arrange them for the gifts, never imagining they'd capture this. Margaret grabs my arm, her mascara streaking. Mama, tell Sophie to stop this. He didn't mean it. He's just desperate. Her voice breaks, and I see the girl I raised, always smoothing over William's messes. I pull her aside, my own voice low but firm. Margaret, he hit her, in front of everyone. You can't excuse this. She shakes her head, tears falling. It's Liam, Mama. He's in trouble. Those men he owes, they're dangerous. I've heard this before. Her justifications for William's gambling, for Liam's failures. I should have called it out decades ago, when I found cash stuffed in their kitchen drawers, when William's business associates called at midnight. Instead, I stayed quiet, thinking love meant letting Margaret handle her marriage. Now, Sophie pays the price. Officer Tate takes Sophie's statement, then approaches William, who's shouting about family business. The other officers cuff him, his face purple with rage as they lead him to the cruiser. This is ridiculous, he yells. A father can't discipline his daughter? I wince, remembering his charm when he married Margaret, how it hid his need for control. Evan wraps an arm around Sophie, his parents, Grace and Ethan, joining him, their faces etched with horror. Grace whispers to me, how could he do this to his own child? I have no answer, only guilt. I should have warned Sophie about William's temper, about the secrets I suspected. Clara shows me the video again, and I notice the crowd's reactions: shock, pity, anger. Sophie's college friends huddle, whispering. Evan's colleagues stare, stunned. I catch Liam's eye, and he looks away, his hands stuffed in his pockets. I want to shake him, ask why he let his debts destroy his sister's night. But I know the answer. He's always been the taker, just like William. I turn to Sophie, her cheeks still red. You did the right thing, I say, my voice trembling. You're stronger than I ever was. She nods, but her eyes are distant, already bracing for what's next. As the police drive William away, Margaret collapses against me, sobbing. He's all I have, Mama. Sophie's ruining us. I hold her, but my heart is with Sophie, who's talking to Evan by the fountain, their silhouettes stark against the twinkling lights. I know this night is just the beginning. Secrets are unraveling, and I'll have to face my own role in letting this family fracture. Have you ever watched someone you love stand up to betrayal, knowing you could have stopped it sooner? That's where I am now, and I'm not letting Sophie face this alone. The next morning, Asheville wakes under a grey sky, the Blue Ridge Mountains shrouded in mist. I sit at my kitchen table in my cottage on Charlotte Street, sipping coffee, the weight of last night pressing on my chest. Sophie calls, her voice raw. Grandma, the police want me to come to the station. They're looking into Dad's debts. I tell her I'll meet her there, grabbing my coat and driving through Asheville's quiet streets, past the River Arts District, where artists are already painting murals in the drizzle. I think of Sophie, my practical girl, who saved $50,000 through years of extra shifts, while William and Margaret bailed out Liam's schemes, multi-level marketing, day trading, that doomed energy drink startup. I knew William's money came from somewhere dark, but I never pushed Margaret to face it. At the police station, Officer Tate greets us, her expression grim. Mrs. Harper, she says to Sophie, your father's been involved in an underground gambling ring for years. He's been using Liam's businesses to launder money. My breath catches. I'd suspected gambling, William's late-night calls, his sudden cash. But laundering? Sophie's face hardens, but her hands tremble. "What does that mean for me?" she asks. Tate explains they're investigating, and the assault charge is solid with Clara's video and the Biltmore's footage. There's more. Tate adds, "Your father borrowed money using your name, claiming it was for your education or medical bills." Sophie's eyes widen. "I never saw a dime," she says, "and I feel a stab of guilt. I should have questioned the loans Margaret mentioned years ago." I pull Sophie aside, my voice low. "I found cash in their house once, sweetheart. Years back. I asked Margaret, but she said it was for investments. I should have pushed harder." Sophie squeezes my hand. "You couldn't have known, Grandma." But I did know. Deep down, I saw William's obsession with status, his need to outshine his father, who'd called him a failure. I share this with Sophie, remembering William's youth, his charm masking a hunger for quick wins. "He always wanted to be the big man," I say. Gambling, loans, it was his way of proving himself. We leave the station, and Sophie drives us to a cafe in the River Arts district, its walls lined with local art. Over coffee, she tells me about relatives calling her, furious, saying William borrowed $40,000 in her name for her graduate school, her car repair. My sister, Ellen, lent him $15,000, thinking it was for Sophie. I feel sick. "I let this happen," I say, my voice breaking. "I let Margaret believe William's lies." Sophie shakes her head. "You raised Mom to be loyal, Grandma. That's not your fault." "But it is. I taught Margaret to forgive too easily, to smooth over cracks instead of fixing them." Back at my cottage, Margaret calls, her voice frantic. "Mama, you have to talk to Sophie. She can't press charges. William's in jail, and Liam's creditors are calling me." I take a deep breath, remembering the nights I heard her cry over William's debts, how I'd comforted her instead of confronting the truth. "Margaret?" I say. "Sophie's protecting herself. William hit her. He's been lying to us all." She sobs. "But he's my husband." I want to shake her, to ask why she let Liam's debts and William's gambling destroy Sophie's joy. Instead, I say, "Come to my place tomorrow. We need to talk, all of us." That night, I lie awake, the mountain wind rattling my windows. I think of Sophie, her strength in calling the police, and Evan, who never wavered. I think of Liam, whose recklessness fueled this fire, and William, whose secrets I should have exposed. Tomorrow I'll push Margaret to face the truth, and I'll stand by Sophie no matter what comes. Have you ever had to confront a truth you ignored too long? That's my next step, and I'm ready to take it with Sophie. The following day, the mist lingers over Asheville, cloaking the Blue Ridge peaks in a ghostly veil. I'm in my cottage, brewing tea, when Sophie arrives, her eyes tired but resolute. "Grandma," Aunt Ellen called, she says. "She's hurt. Dad told her the $15,000 was for my graduate school. I never went to graduate school." My heart sinks. I'd heard Margaret mention loans for Sophie's education, but I never questioned it. Now I see the web William spun, using Sophie's name to scam our family. I pull out an old photo album, showing Sophie pictures of Margaret as a girl, always eager to please. "Your mum learned to cover for William early," I say. I should have taught her to stand up instead. We drive to Ellen's house, a cozy bungalow near the Arboretum. Ellen greets us, her face lined with betrayal. "I thought I was helping you, Sophie," she says, tears welling. "William said you needed it." Sophie explains she knew nothing, And I confess my silence, how I saw William's shady deals, but never spoke. Ellen hugs Sophie, promising to spread the word to other relatives. He took $40,000 total, she says. From me, Uncle Tom, even Cousin Laura. I feel the weight of my inaction. Decades of watching William's charm hide his lies, of letting Margaret believe it was love. Back at my cottage, Liam shows up unannounced, his hair unwashed, his eyes desperate. Grandma, I need to talk to Sophie, he says. I call her over, and he begs for a $5,000 loan to buy time with his creditors. Sophie's voice is ice. I'm not bailing you out, Liam. That's my future. I nod, proud of her strength. But my heart aches for Liam, trapped in William's shadow. You need to face this yourself, I tell him, remembering my late husband, who fought his own demons with honesty, not excuses. Liam leaves, defeated, and I wonder if he'll ever change. Margaret arrives that evening, her face pale. Mama, William's gambling debts are worse than I thought, she admits. He borrowed from some dangerous people. I take her hand, my voice firm. You've enabled him too long, Margaret. It's time to stop. She pulls away, defensive, but I see a crack in her denial. I tell Sophie about the cash I found years ago, the late-night calls from associates. I should have pushed you to leave him, I say to Margaret. I thought you'd figure it out. She cries, but doesn't argue, a first. As Sophie and I sit by my fireplace, she shares her plan to press charges against William. It's not just the slap, she says. It's everything. His lies, his scams. I nod, seeing my own failure reflected in her pain. I'll support you, I promise, knowing this means facing Margaret's anger, Liam's desperation. Officer Tate calls, confirming the gambling ring's depth. William's been recruiting players, taking cuts. The assault charge is just the start. I look at Sophie, her strength a mirror of the woman I wish I'd been. Tomorrow, we'll face Margaret again, and I'll speak the truths I've buried too long. Have you ever had to face a family secret that changed everything? That's where we're headed, and I'm standing with Sophie, no matter the cost. The rain has stopped, but the air in my Asheville cottage feels heavy, as if the weight of our family's secrets has settled into the walls. I've spent decades watching my daughter Margaret and her husband William spiral into a mess of lies and debts. But it's my granddaughter Sophie I'm fighting for now. At my kitchen table, I pour tea for Sophie and my sister Ellen, their faces etched with betrayal. Ellen's voice trembles as she recounts how William borrowed $15,000, claiming it was for Sophie's graduate school, a degree she never pursued. I trusted him, Ellen says, her eyes meeting Sophie's. He said you needed it. Sophie's hands clench around her mug. I didn't know, Aunt Ellen. He used my name for others too, $40,000 total. My heart sinks, remembering the cash I found in Margaret's kitchen years ago, the late-night calls from William's associates. I should have spoken then, but I thought love meant staying quiet. Sophie's strength amazes me. Despite the red mark fading from her cheek where William slapped her at her engagement party, her eyes burn with resolve. I'm pressing charges, she says, her voice steady. Not just for the slap, but for everything. His lies, his scams. I nod, proud, but aching. I taught Margaret to forgive too easily, to smooth over William's darkness, and now Sophie bears the scars. Ellen reaches for Sophie's hand. I'll tell the family the truth, she promises. We thought you were ungrateful, Sophie, but it was William all along. I feel the weight of my silence. Decades of watching William's charm hide his gambling, his need for control. I should have protected my granddaughter. Margaret arrives later, her face pale, her hands twisting a tissue. Mama, you can't let Sophie do this, she pleads. William's in jail. Liam's creditors are calling me. We'll lose everything. I take a deep breath, my librarian's instinct for truth overriding my maternal urge to comfort. Margaret, William hit Sophie in front of 70 people. He's been stealing from our family for years. You've enabled him too long. She flinches, but I press on, remembering my late husband, Henry, who taught me boundaries after his own battles with debt. I should have pushed you to face him years ago, I say. I thought you'd see it yourself. Margaret's eyes fill with tears, but she doesn't argue. A crack in her denial. Sophie sits beside me. Her fiancé Evans support a quiet presence in her life. I tell her about Henry, how he drank too much in our early marriage, how I learned to say no when he asked for money to cover his bar tabs. It wasn't easy, I admit, but it saved us. You're doing the same, Sophie. She nods, but her voice is soft. I just wanted a family, Grandma. Not this. I squeeze her hand, knowing this fight is hers, but I'll be her anchor. I think of Clara, Sophie's artist friend, who recorded William's slap, and Evan's parents, Grace and Ethan, who've shown Sophie what family can be. They're her strength now, not just me. Liam knocks on my door that afternoon, his hair unwashed, his eyes desperate. Grandma, I need Sophie to loan me $5,000, he says, pacing my living room, just to keep the creditors off my back. Sophie, who's joined us, shakes her head. That's my wedding fund, Liam. I worked 5 years for it. You've had enough chances. Her voice is firm, and I feel a surge of pride. I turn to Liam, my tone gentle but unyielding. You need to face this yourself, boy, like Henry did. No more bailouts. Liam's face darkens, but he leaves without arguing, his shoulders slumped. I wonder if he'll ever break free of William's shadow. That evening, I convinced Sophie to see Dr. Laura Bennett, a therapist I've heard about through my book club. You're carrying too much, I tell her. You need someone to help you sort it out. She agrees, and I drive her to Laura's office in downtown Asheville, the streets lined with murals and buskers. As we pass the River Arts District, I think of Clara's studio, a place of healing through colour and light. I hope Sophie finds something similar. When she emerges from the session, her eyes are red, but brighter. Laura says I've been gaslit my whole life, she says. I'm starting to see it. I nod, knowing this is just the beginning of her journey. Margaret calls me that night, her voice shaking. Mama, William's lawyer says the gambling ring is worse than we thought. He could face years in prison. I sit by my fireplace, the crackle of wood grounding me. He made his choices, Margaret, I say. You need to make yours now, for you and Sophie. She's silent, and I know she's wrestling with loyalty to a man who's betrayed us all. I think of the Biltmore Gardens, the fairy lights that should have lit Sophie's joy, not her pain. Tomorrow, I'll gather the family to face these truths together, and I'll stand by Sophie as she presses charges. Have you ever had to push someone you love to see the truth? That's my fight now, and I'm ready. The next week, Asheville's River Arts District hums with life, artists painting under the morning sun, their canvases bursting with the Blue Ridge Mountains colours. I'm Rose, and I'm walking with Sophie to Clara's studio, a haven of paint-splattered walls and soft music. Sophie's been quiet since her therapy session with Dr. Bennett, her mind unravelling the years of William's manipulation. I suggested this visit, hoping Clara's art can help where my words fail. You used to love drawing as a kid, I tell Sophie, remembering her sketches of Asheville's peaks. Maybe this'll help you feel again. She gives me a small smile, her first in days, and I feel a flicker of hope. Clara greets us with a hug, her overalls streaked with turquoise. Sophie, I've got a canvas ready for you, she says, leading us to a corner where paints and brushes wait. I sit nearby, watching Sophie dip a brush in red, her strokes hesitant at first, then bold, painting a storm over a mountain. It's how I feel, she says, her voice raw, angry, but alive. I nod, my heart swelling. I think of my own healing after Henry's drinking, how gardening in my cottage yard brought me back to myself. Clara shares her own story, a toxic family who criticized her art until she cut contact. You choose your family, she tells Sophie, and I see Sophie's eyes light up. We spend the afternoon painting, the studio's windows framing Asheville's vibrant streets. I try a canvas too, my hands shaky but eager, painting a garden like the Biltmores, where Sophie's pain began. Clara praises my work, and I laugh, feeling lighter than I have in years. Sophie's painting evolves, the storm giving way to a sunrise. I want to keep going, she says, and I know she means more than art. I think of Evan's parents, Grace and Ethan, who've been calling Sophie daily, offering love where Margaret and William failed. Last night, Grace sent Sophie a recipe for her grandmother's apple pie, a small gesture that made Sophie cry. They feel like family, Sophie told me, and I agreed, wishing I'd given Margaret that kind of warmth. Back at my cottage, I get a call from Liam. Grandma, I got evicted, he says, his voice rough. I'm bartending now, trying to make it work. I'm surprised. He's never faced consequences before. That's a start, Liam, I say. Keep at it. I tell Sophie, hoping it shows her change is possible, even for her brother. She nods, but her focus is on her future with Evan. I don't want a big wedding anymore, she says. Maybe something small, at the Arboretum, part of the fund for a house, part for therapy. I smile, proud of her clarity. That's wise, I say, thinking of my own simple wedding to Henry under Asheville's oaks. Margaret visits that evening, her eyes tired but clearer. I'm thinking about therapy, she says, surprising me. I've been defending William too long. I hug her, my heart aching for the girl I raised. I enabled you too, Margaret, I admit. I should have pushed you to see his gambling for what it was. She nods, a tear falling. I didn't want to believe it. I think of the cash I found, the lies I ignored, and vow to be honest now. I suggest a family meeting at my cottage to confront William's scams and rebuild what we can. Margaret agrees, a small step toward healing. As Sophie and I plan the meeting, I feel the weight of decades lifting. I've been silent too long, but supporting Sophie, pushing Margaret, gives me purpose. I think of the Biltmore Gardens, where this all began, and the Arboretum, where Sophie's new life will start. Tomorrow, we'll face our family's truths, and I'll help Sophie hold her ground. Have you ever found healing in unexpected places, like art or a friend's kindness? That's where Sophie's headed, and I'm with her every step. The Asheville courthouse looms under a grey November sky, its stone facade as unyielding as the truth we're here to face. I'm sitting in the witness stand, my hands trembling as I testify against my son-in-law, William Harper, for assaulting my granddaughter Sophie at her engagement party. The courtroom smells of polished wood and stale coffee, and the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on the faces below. Sophie, her eyes fierce but tired. Evan, her fiancé, gripping her hand. My daughter Margaret, her face crumpled with grief. I recount the night at the Biltmore estate, how William's hand cracked across Sophie's cheek when she refused to give him her $50,000 wedding fund for Liam's debts. He demanded her money, I say, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. He struck her in front of 70 guests. Clara's video, shown on a screen, replays the slap, the crowd's gasps echoing in the silent room. My words feel like a betrayal, but they're for Sophie, who deserves justice. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Daniels, asks about William's behavior over the years. I hesitate, then speak of the cash I found in their kitchen, the late-night calls from associates, the way Margaret always excused his absences. I suspected he was gambling, I admit, but I never pushed Margaret to confront it. The defense attorney tries to paint William as a stressed father, but Clara's footage and the Biltmore's security cameras leave no room for doubt. Sophie testifies next, her voice clear as she describes the assault and William's years of financial manipulation, using her name to borrow $40,000 from relatives. I watch Margaret flinch, her loyalty to William cracking under the weight of truth. Ms. Daniels reveals the bigger picture. William's plea deal. He'll serve 18 months in a minimum security facility for financial crimes tied to an underground gambling ring, with probation for the assault. He's been recruiting players and laundering money through Liam's failed businesses, a web of deceit I should have unraveled years ago. Liam, called as a witness, admits his role, his voice low. I let Dad use my accounts, he says, avoiding Sophie's eyes. I didn't ask questions. The judge's gavel falls, finalizing the deal, and William's face sags, his charm gone. Margaret sobs, but Sophie sits tall, Evan's arm around her. I'm proud, but my heart aches for my daughter, caught in her own denial. Outside, Margaret grabs my arm. Mama, you can't let Sophie do this. William doesn't deserve prison. Her eyes are desperate, and I see the girl I raised, always smoothing over pain. He hit her, Margaret, I say, my voice firm. He stole from our family. You've protected him too long. She pulls away, but I see a flicker of doubt. Sophie joins us, her cheek no longer red, but her resolve unbroken. I'm not dropping the charges, she says. This is about respect. I nod, thinking of my late husband, Henry, who taught me to stand firm when I stopped covering his bar tabs. You're doing right, Sophie, I say, squeezing her hand. I visit William in jail the next day, hoping for remorse. The visiting room is cold, the metal table scratched. He looks older, his hair thinning, his eyes dull. Rose, tell Sophie to stop this, he says, his voice low. I was under pressure. Those men I owe, they're dangerous. I shake my head. You made those choices, William. You hurt Sophie, lied to us all. He shifts, offering no apology, just excuses. I think of the Biltmore Gardens, the fairy lights that should have framed Sophie's joy, not her pain. You need to face this, I tell him, standing to leave. He calls after me, but I don't turn back. Sophie's strength is my guide now. Back at my cottage, I find Sophie planning her next steps with Evan. I want to keep seeing Dr. Bennett, she says, and maybe a smaller wedding at the Arboretum. I smile, remembering my own simple wedding under Asheville's oaks. That's wise, I say, knowing this is her reclaiming her future. Liam calls later, surprising me. I'm starting Debtors Anonymous, he says. I got a bartending job. No more schemes. His voice holds a hint of accountability, a first, I tell Sophie, hoping it shows her change is possible. As we prepare for a family meeting to confront William's lies, I feel a shift. Our family is breaking. But maybe we can rebuild. Have you ever stood by someone fighting for justice, knowing it would hurt others you love? That's where I am, and Sophie's courage carries me forward. My cottage on Charlotte Street smells of chamomile tea and fresh-baked cornbread as I prepare for the family meeting. It's been a week since William's plea deal, and Asheville's autumn leaves paint the Blue Ridge Mountains in fiery reds and golds. I'm Rose, and at 72, I'm finally speaking the truths I've buried too long. Sophie sits across from me, her eyes tired but determined, while Margaret fidgets, her hands twisting a napkin. My sister Ellen and cousin Laura join us, their faces heavy with the betrayal of William's scams. He said it was for Sophie's medical bills, Laura says, her voice sharp. $3,000 gone. Ellen nods. $15,000 for her graduate school. I should have checked with you, Sophie. Sophie's jaw tightens. I didn't know, she says. He used my name to scam everyone. I take a deep breath, my librarian's instinct for truth pushing me forward. I'm sorry too, I say. I saw signs, cash in their house, strange calls. But I didn't push Margaret to face it. Margaret's eyes well up. Mama, I thought I was helping William. He said it was for the family. I reach for her hand. You wanted to believe him, but he manipulated us all. I share memories of Margaret as a girl, always eager to please, how I taught her loyalty, but not strength. I should have shown you how to say no, I admit, like I did with Henry when he drank too much. Margaret nods, a tear falling, and I see a crack in her denial, a chance for change. Sophie speaks up, her voice steady. I'm rebuilding with Evan, Aunt Ellen, cousin Laura. I want you to know the truth. Ellen hugs her, promising to spread the word to other relatives. Laura, softer now, offers to help Sophie reconnect with the family. I feel a weight lift, but the work isn't done. Margaret hesitates, then says, I'm starting therapy, Mama. Dr. Bennett's helping me see I enabled William. I'm stunned. She's never admitted this before. That's a brave step, I say, thinking of my own journey with Henry, how therapy helped us heal. Sophie smiles faintly, and I know this meeting is a turning point. Liam arrives late, his bartending uniform wrinkled but his eyes clearer. I'm trying, Grandma, he says. Night classes, Debtors Anonymous. I'm sorry for the mess I caused. It's not a full apology, but it's more than he's ever offered. Sophie nods, cautious. Keep at it, Liam, she says. I think of the Biltmore Gardens, where this began, and the North Carolina Arboretum, where Sophie plans her small wedding. We're all starting over, I say, looking at Margaret. But it starts with honesty. She nods, and I feel a spark of hope. Our family can heal if we face the truth together. Sophie and I visit the Arboretum the next day, its paths lined with late-season maples. She shows me where she wants to say I do with Evan, under a canopy of red leaves. Part of the fund for this, part for a house, she says, and therapy. I need to keep going. I'm proud, remembering my own simple wedding, how Henry and I built a life on love, not lies. You're building something real, I tell her. Back at my cottage, I pull out my old gardening journal, where I wrote about planting roots after Henry's recovery. I show it to Sophie, hoping it inspires her. That evening, I join Sophie at a financial literacy program in Asheville, where she volunteers to share her story. I watch her speak to young adults, her voice strong as she talks about boundaries, about William's scams. Don't let family guilt steal your future, she says, and I see heads nod, eyes wide. I'm in awe of her, my granddaughter who's turning pain into purpose. I share my own story with a few attendees about enabling Henry until I learned to stand firm. It's never too late, I say, feeling my own strength grow. As we drive home, Sophie talks about inviting only close friends and Evan's parents to the wedding. I'm not ready for Mum there, she admits. I nod, knowing Margaret's journey is slower. Give her time, I say, thinking of the therapy she's started. The Arboretum's image lingers in my mind, a place of new beginnings. Tomorrow, we'll plan the wedding, and I'll help Sophie hold her boundaries, just as she's teaching me to hold mine. Have you ever rebuilt a family after it broke apart? That's our path now, and Sophie's leading the way. The North Carolina Arboretum glows under a crisp October sun, its maple leaves blazing red and gold, a canopy of hope over the small gathering below. I'm Rose, 72, and today I stand among 30 loved ones, watching my granddaughter Sophie marry Evan Carter, her strength a beacon after our family's storm. The air smells of pine and earth, and the Blue Ridge Mountains frame the scene, Asheville's heart beating in every rustling leaf. Sophie's ivory sheath dress shimmers, simple yet radiant, and Evan's charcoal suit matches the late-season hydrangeas in her bouquet. I clutch my shawl, tears pricking my eyes, not from sorrow, but from pride. She's built this day on her terms, after everything. The ceremony unfolds on a grassy clearing, wooden chairs arranged in a semicircle, fairy lights strung delicately above, echoing the Biltmore Gardens, where this journey began with William's slap. That night feels distant now, though its scars linger. Sophie's $50,000 wedding fund, painstakingly saved through her years as a pharmaceutical researcher, has been split wisely. Part for this intimate wedding, part for a modest home she and Evan closed on last month, and part for therapy with Dr. Laura Bennett, which has helped her heal. I see her strength in every step, her hand steady in Evan's as they exchange vows. I promise to build a life of respect and love, Sophie says, her voice clear. And I know she's not just speaking to Evan, but to herself, reclaiming her future. I stand near the front, my heart full as I watch Clara, Sophie's artist friend, adjust her maid of honor sash, her eyes bright with pride. Evan's parents, Grace and Ethan, sit beside me, their warmth a contrast to my daughter Margaret's quiet presence across the aisle. Margaret's here, dressed in a simple navy dress, her face showing the strain of therapy, and William's 18-month sentence for his gambling crimes. She's been attending sessions with Dr. Bennett, slowly acknowledging her role as William's enabler. "You look beautiful, Sophie," she told her earlier, during a hesitant embrace, and I saw a flicker of the mother I raised, trying to rebuild. It's slow, but it's progress. The officiant, a local poet with a gentle voice, speaks of love as a choice, a commitment to growth. I think of my own marriage to Henry, how we navigated his drinking and my enabling, how we learned to set boundaries. Sophie's doing the same. Her vows a promise to break our family's cycle of manipulation. Evan's words are steady, his software engineer's logic softened by love. "You taught me what strength looks like," he says. And the guests, Sophie's college friends, Evan's colleagues, a few Asheville locals, smile, some wiping tears. I glance at Margaret, her hands clasped tightly, and I hope she's listening, learning. Clara steps forward for her toast, clinking her glass. "I've known Sophie since we painted together in the River Arts District," she says, her voice warm. "She's always been determined, but this year I saw her become a warrior, standing up to betrayal, choosing joy." She raises her glass. "To Sophie and Evan, whose love is built on respect and truth." The applause is soft but heartfelt, and I feel a lump in my throat. I'm next, and my hands shake as I stand, clutching a note card. "Sophie, Evan," I begin, my voice catching. "You've shown me what family can be. Not perfect, but honest. I've watched our family break. My silence, Margaret's enabling, William's lies. But you, Sophie, rebuilt it with courage. Here's to your new beginning, and to the love that heals. Sophie's eyes glisten, and Evan squeezes her hand. I sit, my heart full, knowing my words are for Margaret too. The reception unfolds in the Arboretum's pavilion, glass walls framing the autumn hills. Tables are set with simple linens, local wildflowers, and Clara's hand-painted place cards. Sophie and Evan dance under string lights to a slow folk tune, Asheville's music scene alive in the banjo's twang. I watch Margaret linger near the edge, talking quietly with Grace. I'm trying to understand Sophie's choices, Margaret tells her, and I overhear Grace reply, "She's building something beautiful. You can too." I smile, hoping Margaret's therapy continues to open her eyes. Liam, absent today, sent a note declining his invitation. "I'd only make it harder," he wrote, a rare, mature choice. He's working as a bartender, attending Debtors Anonymous, and studying for a certification. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. I step outside for a moment, the Arboretum's paths lit by soft lanterns. Sophie finds me, her dress catching the moonlight. "Grandma, thank you," she says, hugging me. "You've been my rock." I shake my head. "You're the strong one, sweetheart. You taught me to speak up." I think of the Biltmore, where William's slap shattered her night, and the River Arts District, where Clara's studio helped her heal. I think of my cottage, where our family meeting bared William's scams, $40,000 stolen from relatives, using Sophie's name. Sophie's volunteering now, sharing her story at a financial literacy program, turning pain into purpose. I'm proud, but I carry my own regret for enabling Margaret, for staying silent too long. William, 2 months into his sentence, sent a brief note via Margaret, congratulating Sophie. I read it once, then tucked it away. His journey, restitution, counseling for his gambling, will be long, and I'm not waiting for his redemption. Margaret's progress is what matters now, her tentative steps toward accountability. "Dr. Bennett's helping," she told me last week, and I see it in her presence here, quiet but present. Sophie's chosen family, Evan, Clara, Grace, Ethan, surrounds her, laughing as they cut a small wedding cake. This is what family should be, I realize, built on mutual respect, not obligation. As the night winds down, I speak to the camera, imagining the YouTube audience, women like Sophie, seeking stories of strength. "I've watched my family break and heal," I say, my voice steady. Sophie's courage, setting boundaries against betrayal, taught me to face my own silence. If you've faced family conflict, know this. Saying no to pain means saying yes to yourself. Share your story below, and let's keep this journey going. I smile, knowing Sophie's wedding is not just an end, but a beginning, a legacy of love and truth rooted in Asheville's hills that I'll carry forever.